Just asking the question today, should we be taking COVID seriously?
Welcome to the Prosperity RX Podcast. This is Keith Abel with your prescription for prosperity. This is a podcast where I give you hope. I show you the path to build a life of health, wealth, and prosperity. To build a life that you don't need a vacation from. Folks, we've all messed up by believing some of the prevailing wellness and money myths in our culture. The turning point in your life, however, comes when you're willing to own up to it, to take your health and your finances into your own hands, to claw your way out of whatever's holding you back and never live in that lie again. Let me ask you, what good is your wealth if you have poor health? And what good is your health if you have no wealth? If you're willing to own up to it, to accept that you do have the power to change your circumstances, and that you're willing to do whatever it takes, then this podcast is for you. Humorist Josh Billings said, health is like money. We never have a true idea of its value until we lose it. You truly can change your life and start on the true path for good health, financial peace, and prosperity. So let's get on with the show.
I posted something a couple days ago and I was accused of not taking COVID seriously because of what I posted, which I don't understand how that was inferred, but anyhow, these numbers are a few days old now. But here in Kentucky, there's been 724 deaths from COVID-19. I think it's a few higher now, but a few days ago when I got these numbers, that's what it was. And of that 724 deaths, 477 of them were in long-term care facilities. So that's more than half the deaths in this state have been in long-term care facilities. So that means only 247 people have died that were not trapped in long-term care facilities. And at the time, there were 28,727 cases. I think we actually have gone over 31,000 now. But when you look at what the rate is of death, if you don't live in a healthcare facility, it's only 0.0085. And just by posting those numbers, I was accused of not taking COVID seriously. Something else I mentioned is you're more likely to die from medical errors. According to a recent survey from Johns Hopkins University, more than 250,000 people in the United States die every year because of medical mistakes, making it the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not taking COVID seriously. I think we should be taking COVID very seriously. I have an 80-year-old mother-in-law living here. Thanks, Sandra, for jumping on. I have an 80-year-old mother-in-law that's living with us, so we're taking this disease very seriously. She had surgery back before all this happened and was staying with us when the recovery started. So that's why, we've kept her with us ever since, because we're trying to make sure she stays safe. And we do take it seriously. For the most part, I'm the only one in the family that goes out and does the shopping. My wife does occasionally, but for the most part, I'm the one that goes out and gets the groceries and everything because I'm the only one that has a full-time job outside the home. So I'm already out there in the world. But when I'm out there in the world, when I'm going to the grocery store or running to Walmart or Myers or wherever, I'm wearing that face mask. I'm not taking any chances. I'm 59 years old myself. So I'm in that, in that range of people that need to take this disease more seriously. What I am saying when I post these numbers is we're not getting the whole story. We really don't know what the threat is to the general population. We're testing more people now, so we're finding much more positive cases. But we're finding more people now that are positive than we did during that initial surge. Most of the people during the initial surge, we would have never known about, had we not been testing now. During that initial surge, these people were unknown because we didn't test people until they actually had symptoms that were showing up in a healthcare facility. Now we're testing more and more people, so we're finding more and more positives that may never even lead to hospitalizations or deaths. So that's one of the things that I think that we're being misled about, is the focus on more positives right now. Likewise, even though we're finding more new cases, we're not seeing a corresponding percent increase in deaths. Yes, we're seeing an increase in deaths, but not at the same percentage rate as the increase of new cases that we're finding. But we're focusing on the increase in new cases as if it's the most horrible thing in the world, when it doesn't correlate to what was happening back in March. Because back in March, the only people we knew about were the people that were going into the hospitals that had the symptoms. So that's one of the factors. In fact, with more testing and with us finding more asymptomatic people and more positives, we're going to see the positive cases to death rate ratio continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller, because we're flooding the system with all these people that weren't getting counted the first time. And the media's not reporting it. The media's not reporting truthfully on whether we're seeing an increase in hospitalizations or a major increase in death rates. I know there's some parts of the country the hospitalization rate has skyrocketed and some of the facilities are full. Kentucky, to the best of my knowledge, isn't seeing that. My mother-in-law was in the hospital a week ago with a real high spike in her blood pressure, and I asked the folks there at the hospital, and they said they're not seeing, at that time anyhow, they weren't seeing a spike in new admissions due to coronavirus. But the media keeps comparing the new case numbers to the original surge, and they're scaring people unnecessarily. It's causing other problems because of the way they're reporting this, like mental issues, mental health issues. They're scaring people to the death. They're scaring people to suicide. They're scaring people. And then also economic issues that's happening because of it. Are we overreacting? I don't know. But from what I'm seeing in the numbers, I think shutting everything down isn't being expressed in the numbers. I think that's the words I'm trying to use. So we've got to weigh those differences. The long-term care death rate, that's worsened because the people in long-term care are generally in a poor state of care overall. And also, I think it's a sign of the poor state in general of our long-term care infrastructure. Unfortunately, there are many, many poorly run facilities than there are well-managed facilities. I think that the number of poorly ran ones far outpace the number of facilities that are managed well. Also, because of all the drastic cuts in funding, no matter whether it's insurance cuts or whatever, I'm not getting into the political side of that or what's causing it, but because of all the cuts in funding to the long-term care facilities, they're having to cut staff. And they're cutting the staffs all the way down to bare minimum. And even many facilities are having a hard time even finding well-qualified applicants to choose to work in long-term care simply because they pay them less. And they have more patients to care for. And it's a thankless job. So I think all these things are playing into the higher death rate in the long-term care facilities. And they mentioned herd immunity. We need to slow things down so we can develop herd immunity, and I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think herd immunity is something that we're going to see from the coronavirus. Herd immunity relies on antibody response. The common cold is a coronavirus, so we've not developed a herd immunity to it. We've seen so far in the early studies that people are not developing antibodies to this coronavirus. And it's just simply because the way the biology of the coronavirus itself and the way antibodies are designed by the body. They're designed to recognize certain proteins, and they're not finding it's not able to, so far, it's not able to develop antibodies to it, just like we can't develop antibodies to the common cold, which is, again, a coronavirus. type of virus. Early studies are showing, just like the flu virus, that the flu virus we don't develop antibodies to. So they're starting to think that just like on the flu vaccines, that we're going to have boosters probably every year on this coronavirus vaccine. And again, it all has to do with we're not developing antibodies to it. And it's just, again, because of the biology involved with this type of virus. We are seeing some success using interferon, which is a drug that boosts T cell response. It's the same, the T cells are the same cells that the AIDS virus wiped out. And that's why it took so long to find therapies that were successful in AIDS, because we had to find a way to get around that, because the T cells are the soldiers that fight the battle with these infections. And we know that in children, they've got a much more vigorous T cell response to the coronavirus, leading to a much lower rate of severe infections for the children. So we know there's something else going on with the coronavirus and with T cell response. And that's the area I think they're starting to look at more in the immunotherapy, is trying to find ways to boost that T cell response. And that's why the flu vaccine, if you get the right vaccine for the flu that's coming that year, it does pretty good at helping your body fight the flu. And I think that's the same situation we're going to have here. The coronavirus, I think when a vaccine is finally developed, it's going to be really good at helping the body mount that T cell defense. But it's not going to be something that's going to give us lifelong immunity to it like we had from the tuberculosis vaccine, for instance. So I think that's another area that we have to consider, and it's going to take some time to develop this type of thing, these types of vaccines. I know they're saying they're on the fast track and they got all these vaccines in clinicals right now, but I still think that's still further down the road. So yeah, we do need to take this virus serious. We do need to protect ourselves. We need to protect others. We need to protect folks like me that have elderly people that are living with us, because not everybody is in their 20s and has the best immune system in the world because they've taken care of themselves and they've ate right and all those kinds of things. So I think that's why we need some caution out there. But shutting down the entire economy, I don't know. It's a difficult topic to talk about. My main point when I posted those numbers was that we're not being told the whole thing when it comes to the media. I think their main thing is to scare you, so you tune into the media, tune into their reports more. You get glued to their reports. I mean, we've seen that with every crisis in the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, however long we've had 24-hour media. And it's difficult. I mean, when I see these groups of people where, you got 20, 30 people all gathering together, nobody's taking precautions. I think that's a mistake. But at the same time, completely shutting the population down is a mistake too. And they talk about Italy and New York. Why was it hit so hard there? Italy, we know it's because the population is a much older population that it hit. Their overall population is older, and people had many comorbidities. And what I mean by comorbidities is other underlying health conditions. New York, the vast majority of the deaths in that first wave were long-term care, and it's partly because of the government policy there of dumping folks out of the hospitals into the long-term care facilities, trying to free up hospital room, and I think that exacerbated the problem that we see all across the country with long-term care. My guess from personal experience with my work years ago with some of the staff at some of those New York facilities is that they weren't prepared staffing-wise, supply-wise, otherwise, anyways, to handle the huge influx of new patients they got. And then combining that with a shortage of staff and combining that with a virus that at that point there really wasn't a test for, it was a recipe for disaster there. As far as another number that keeps getting reported, basically they're saying now that 1% of the population has COVID. So my question is, does all of that 1% still have it? They never seem to subtract the numbers of the people that recover from the numbers. So 1% doesn't have it all at once, and they never did. So that's another way that we're being misled. They just keep adding to this number. Kentucky now has 31,000 COVID cases. No, we don't have 31,000 COVID cases. A certain percentage of those people have already recovered and have moved on. So no, we don't have 31,000 COVID cases. You're scaring people. And that's what frustrates me. And again, I'm a healthcare worker. We need to take this disease seriously. We need, to my opinion, the best defense is wearing a mask when we're going to be in public. Not wearing a mask when you're jogging in the trails in the park. Not wearing a mask when you're taking the walk to your neighborhood. That's stupid. But wearing a mask when you're in a crowd of people. If you're out on a golf course, you're not with a crowd of people, you don't need to have a mask on. If you're playing tennis, you're far enough away from each other, you don't need to have a mask on. But you need to have a mask when you're going to be in areas where you're at least 6 feet apart from people. I go to the store, like I said earlier, I wear a mask. Period. I'm not going to go in without a mask. Out of the total population, 1.41% have gotten diagnosed with corona. As we test more people, that number is going to rise. But that's because we're finding, again, folks that never developed symptoms and we would never known about them in the first place. The death rate of current confirmed cases is 3.35%. But when you subtract out the death rate in long-term care facilities, the death rate is less than 1%. It's less than 0%, 0.08 in Kentucky. And the numbers, I'm sure, are similar in other states. I believe a huge percentage of these deaths, like I said, are from long-term care facilities, and we really need to take a better look at dealing with the disease by focusing on long-term care patients, the elderly patients. We need to really be focusing in on that and focus a little less on the 20-year-olds and the grade school kids. They are so much less likely to have bad outcomes from us. So we need to be focusing on finding ways of preventing the spread in long-term care and preventing the spread in the elderly population. I've been lucky because I've worked a job where I've not lost my job. I'm considered an essential worker as a pharmacist. So, I've not taken a significant hit that other people are taking. And I realize that. And being a person that was on that other side at one point in my life, I understand how difficult it is when jobs are taken away and how difficult it is when you feel like you're cramped up in your house. Like I said, I think the suicide rates, the numbers on suicides are lagging behind when it comes to reporting on that. It always has. So we won't know this year's suicide numbers until next year, maybe even longer. But I feel like the suicide rates probably are going to be increasing. In 2008, for example, when we had the economic crash in 2008, the suicide rates a few years later, when they compiled the data, they discovered that the suicide rate doubled because of that economic crash. And that economic crash is nowhere near what we're experiencing right now. This crash has hit a larger part of our population. And on top of that, the total fear some people have of COVID is making the mental health issues much worse. And then add to that the fact that people are having loved ones that are passing away and they're not able to be with them. And they're not able to go to a funeral or a wake and have that moment to bond with some of the other family. All that's taken away. I think that's going to take a big toll on people's mental status, social isolation. I think these are things too that we really have to consider more when we consider what our response should be to the coronavirus crisis. So we need to be concentrating on fixing the problem in long-term care. We need to be concentrating on the other issues that we might be causing because of an overreaction to the crisis. The mental health issues, that worries me the most, that how bad that's going to be in a few years. But also the devastating economic issues. I don't think those things are being given as severe of consideration as they should, as serious of consideration as it should. I mean, the people that are involved in the decision making, the doctors and medical professionals and, folks like me that are on that front line, we're not being hurt in the same ways as, the little old lady living down the street alone, as the worker that's completely out of a job right now because their facilities or factories or whatever are being shut down. We're not being affected the same way, and I think that sometimes we can, what's the word I'm looking for? We can put less emphasis on that because it's not something that's in our world. But we really need to be thinking about that because that is the real world out there. And there's millions of people that don't have jobs now, or that the jobs have been affected drastically. And if this thing continues on and we continue to shut down the economy completely, we're going to have more and more businesses go out of business. So these jobs aren't going to come back for a lot of these people. And they're worried about that. And these are all the things that we need to be taken. So yes, I do take the coronavirus seriously, but there's so many things involved with coronavirus that all have to be taken seriously. We have to take a serious look at every single bit of it. And there's something else that I haven't brought up at all, and you don't hear anywhere else being brought up. But this is something I've been talking about for years. I just haven't brought it up in this conversation right now. Americans need to start taking much more responsibility for their own health and wellness. We want a pill to manage, not actually fix a disease that was caused in most part by our own bad behavior, by poor nutrition, by poor habits. And we want a medical system to give us something to fix it so we can continue in our poor behavior and our poor habits. And that's been the number one contributor, I think, to the death rate in this disease. All these comorbidities, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, all these diseases are being caused because of decisions we made years ago, because of lifestyle decisions we made, because of the decisions we make every single day on what food we're going to put in our mouth. We want all these convenience foods, and all these convenience foods are just chock full of chemicals to make them taste better, chemicals to increase the shelf life so we can keep the price down. And that's what's driving our poor health, poor nutrition, poor food choices, laziness, not getting out and stretching, not getting out and walking, or whatever we can do. Our consumption of wheat has just gone absolutely through the roof. And I'm not talking about just breads and pastas. We put wheat in everything. If you read the labels, there's wheat in almost every product that is manufactured. And all that wheat, I think because we're overwhelming our system so much, we're destroying our digestive tract, and that's causing an even bigger problem with nutrition. we're not absorbing any of the nutrition that we're getting from our food. And that's assuming we're getting any nutrition from our food. We fill our food with soy. You know, soy is full of all types of naturally occurring excitotoxins and estrogens. You know, that's destroying men's testosterone. It's contributing to increased breast cancer rate in both men and women. It's the excitotoxins in it are contributing to ADD and autism in children. And then I'm not even talking about the glycoside that's in it and other pesticide contamination that's in our food. Also the fact that our food, even the best organically grown farm food, doesn't have the nutritional values of the foods a century ago because we only add nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to the soil. We don't let the rivers flood the farmland anymore. Do you know what happens when the river floods the farmland? It brings up as many as 74 different nutrients into the soil from the mountains 1,000 miles away. It's all brought downstream and then it's dumped into the cropland. Back in the pioneer days, that bottomland that got flooded all the time, that was the most valuable farmland you could buy. If you couldn't afford that kind of farmland and you lived like the Ingalls did, Laura Ingalls Wilder, they would farm their plot of land wherever it is to the point where it wouldn't farm anymore and they would have to move. If you read their books, they moved a lot. You don't see that on the TV show, but if you read the books, you see that. And that's why the farm would die. They'd have to move somewhere else so they can keep farming. And that's just one more thing that's contributing to our problem. You know, our food, in the 1930s, the government issued a report that said the food then wasn't as good as the food 50 years ago as far as the amount of nutrition in it. And what have we changed since then? We've dammed up every single river. That's what we've done since then. Hydroelectric dams. So if the minerals aren't in the food that you eat, the nutrition's not in the food you eat, and if the nutrition's not in the food that the animals eat, then we're not going to get that nutrition. And I think it's all this combined together that is what's made this virus what it is today. And the only thing I can hope is that we learn a lesson here. We learn a lesson that we need to start taking care of our bodies now. We need to start making sure we're getting all the nutrition we need now. We need to start cutting out all that overly processed foods that are designed to increase shelf life, that have chemicals in it that are designed to increase taste. We need to go back to the basics. Also, because of the economic issue, all these people losing their jobs, we need to take Dave Ramsey serious. We need to have a 6-month emergency fund, and I think a lot of people are going to see that now. We need to be prepared. So if something like this happens again, which it's going to happen, there's going to be another disease come. There's going to be another pandemic or epidemic come down the road. And it's going to shut down the economy again. And it's going to cause people to die again. And we need to prepare ourselves. We need to start working on it now. I don't know that there's anything we can do right now to prepare ourselves from getting the coronavirus, other than practicing social distancing. We need to start eating better now to start on that road. And maybe we'll be one of the lucky ones that doesn't get the coronavirus. But we need to be prepared for the next one. We need to be prepared for that next disaster. And not even counting the social unrest and all the other things going on right now. Mental health is a major issue that we need to be concerned about. We need to be concerned about our neighbor. We need to check in on our neighbor. Make sure the elderly and the disabled around us are getting the nutrition they need and getting the social companionship that they need. I know my mother-in-law, God bless her, her only social activity she ever looked forward to was going to the bingo every week. And she hasn't been able to do that now in 6 months. First because of her surgery she had, and then coronavirus hit. Thankfully, she has family around. But how many other elderly people are out there that don't have the family around? So yeah, when I reported those numbers, let me pull those numbers back up here again. 724 deaths in Kentucky, 477 of them from long-term care. That means 247 deaths of non-long-term care patients out of, at that time, 29,000 positives. That wasn't to say that I don't care and I don't take coronavirus serious. Yeah, 247 deaths is not a lot of deaths when you consider 250,000 people die in healthcare facilities from medical errors. But folks, we need to take this seriously, but we need to take it seriously from a multifaceted approach. There's a lot of things going on here, and we have to weigh each of our responses. And the only thing I'm saying here is I don't know that the response of shutting everything down was the right response and is still the right response when the people that are not in long-term care facility, the percentage of death for people not in long-term care facility is so small. We really need to be looking at ways to do better with long-term care patients. We need to have more funding for more reimbursement, better reimbursement for the long-term care facilities so they can hire appropriate staff. I mean, that right there is the biggest problem. They can't hire the appropriate staff. And without the appropriate staff, nothing's going to change in long-term care. So yes, I do take this disease seriously. And I take serious all the ways it's affecting us. Not just from the medical perspective. And this is a pharmacist talking. I know the science behind it. I read the journals. I know what's going on. So we need to take this thing serious, not just from that medical perspective, but also from the social perspective and the economic perspective. Because overreacting on the medical side of it is going to cause more problems on the other two areas, which will lead to more medical problems in the future. Folks, I thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Sometimes I go off on a rant, and I don't know, I'm just passionate about this one. And I really do appreciate you guys jumping on here. So I will talk to you again in the...
This has been the Prosperity RX podcast with pharmacist Keith Abel. Prosperity RX, your prescription for health, wellness, and prosperity. If you found value with this episode, please share and go to Apple iTunes, make a comment, and give us a 5-star rating. Also subscribe to iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Prosperity RX can also be found on YouTube at youtube.com/Prosperity RX. Pharmacist Keith is also a business entrepreneur. He helps folks from all walks of life start and run their own home-based business. If you'd like Keith to help you create your own business, then visit aimhighforsuccess.com.